We've been just discussing the questions we were considering in the breakout rooms, what to have in your mind
To have in your mind?
at the time of death. What to
Oh,
what
right. Yeah.
like to hold.
Yeah. Not popcorn. Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll continue that. Well, I mean, that's the main question for the whole module, really. And as far as our own practice, like that's what we want to get clear about and then focus on, yeah, from day to day in our daily lives. Yeah, I don't know. Was there some follow-up, or are you just reporting, Mariella? Is there some question, or you're just mentioning?
Everybody was kind of contributing to that. And one of the things that that several of us brought up is that, you know, your mind becomes more and more subtle and you lose the conceptual thought. And so how do we think about something in a non-conceptual way?
Yeah, that's a big question. That's definitely a big doubt. Yeah, it seems to be, yeah, that's why familiarity is so important. So, and your final thoughts just before you lose the power to, you know, voluntarily conceptualize. I think probably, you know, I mean, it's always helpful to look at our dreams, the process of falling asleep and dreaming and waking up, because that's like it's a similar process. So you find, I mean, do you find kind of like, you know, when you're going to sleep at night, then the last thing, because we also lose the power to voluntarily conceptualize when we fall asleep, right? When we're, you know, when we're laying in bed, you know, trying to go to sleep, we can think about whatever we want. But then as we fall asleep, we don't think about anything. And then when we're dreaming, we think about things, but we don't have much control over like what we think about, right? So do you find that like oftentimes it happens that what you're thinking about in your dreams is related to what you're thinking about just before you fell asleep, or in generally what you were thinking about that day? Yeah. So just check your own experience. For different people, it can be totally different, right? But I think that's kind of, I know in my own experience, I think many people find, I mean, yeah, anyway, check your own experience, but many people I think find they're sometimes you're thinking about things in your dreams that you have been on your mind during the day. So if that's the case, then that would be, you know, an indication of what's going to be on our mind in the bardo. Right? It's whatever was most on our mind in that previous life, and especially in the moments just before you died. So I think that's the kind of how we deal with that. I mean, the probably the most the best strategies for kind of ensuring we have something virtuous on our minds when we go into that those non-conceptual phases of dying, is that we ensure we're just habituated to really, yeah, focusing our mind in positive ways before, and then hopefully the kind of inertia of that habituation carries into that non-conceptual state. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good, I mean, intro for the session today, because today mostly we're covering kind of a lot of different topics that sort of fill in that whole picture about the process of dying and entering the bardo, going through the bardo and taking rebirth. Yeah, so anyway, let's generate a positive motivation first, and then generate mind of refuge, and then. So first sit quietly for a few moments. Try to focus your attention on an object of meditation. And then think about why you're here. What's your motivation for engaging in this session on impermanence and death, the process of dying, taking rebirth. So for yourself personally, what are your kind of long-term aspirations and aims that you'd like to work towards by engaging in this session? And then also remember, and if you like, you can visualize other sentient beings seated around you. So remember your interconnectedness with other sentient beings. And how would you like your engagement with this session to contribute towards their welfare and relieving their suffering? And then finally, mind of refuge. So if you like, visualize, bring to mind in the space before you an object of refuge, whether it's the Buddha Dhamma Sangha or any other chosen object, even an ideal or something. So what do you turn to for guidance and ultimate sort of protection from all the troubles of life and samsara? So bring that to mind and generate a mind of faith, and then make a kind of request from your heart for guidance, inspiration. Okay, so I can continue from there. Oh, I was just thinking, I usually think of, anyway, thinking of things while we're doing the motivation, the meditation. One really been talk about the benefits of reflecting on impermanence and death. One of the real, I think, when we think about, for someone who wants to just naturally, I think as many people do, want to use our lives to try to benefit others, bring some, good in the world. Then, when you think about impermanence and death, it really helps to kind of broaden your perspective on what's possible. And kind of help you think in terms of not just this life, but also if I really want to benefit people, we can see how, and it's often frustrating, how limited we are just within one life. In this life, in one way, there's so little we can do. We can only contact so many people. We only have so much personal energy and skills and so forth. And so oftentimes we can feel kind of limited in what we can do to benefit the world, benefit people. But then when we think about, that we're going to die, but death is not the end. It's just a period of kind of transformation or transition into a next life. And if we use that opportunity well, we can continue what we're doing in this life and next life, and continue. So you see that very tangibly, like in the Tibetan culture. It's very unusual in the world, probably one of the only cultures in the world, one of the very few, where there is that understanding that, a person can they can take rebirth again and again within the same family, within the same, language speakers, within the same kind of culture, and they can continue to develop as a person from life to life. Although in each life, of course, they're a different person in one way, but so it's very helpful to use. I mean, that's not exceptional to the Tibet. Like, there's also that kind of understanding, and apparently among some of the Native Americans of Canada, Inuit people, I think. And you see in even Ian Stevenson's research, Jim Tucker's research, that they do research also among some of the kind of a Muslim sect or maybe it's the Christians, I forget, in Lebanon. In Lebanon, there's also, I don't remember the name of that group of people, but there's also a people where they have this understanding that oftentimes children take rebirth to the same family, extended family again. So it, if you think like that, it gives a whole different, I don't know, it's kind of a very hopeful attitude in a way. It gives you a lot more hope, I think, that you can continue. And it gives you a lot of, and so it makes it help you realize how important it is to take death seriously and actually think about it and think about the details of the process and what happens and to prepare for it, day to day. Yeah. So that said, we're going to look at some of the more details about what happens as we die. Yeah. Okay, so I'll jump to my PowerPoint presentation again. I got time this week, just barely, to put something together. So here we are, session 5. So just briefly to review, right, in this module, it's the 4th module of DB, gone through, what is it, the mind, how to meditate, and the path, presentation of the whole path. So here we are, impermanence and death. This topic belongs to the path, the small scope, say it a short way, the small scope, presenting the path shared with beings of sort of smaller attitude in a way. So yeah, so we're trying to turn away from exclusively using our life to just chase after objects of attachment in this life, right? And to think about how we're going to be separated from all this at the time of death. It's only our mind that goes on. So it's qualities of mind, and yeah, positive karma and so forth, and our habituation to those, our Dharma practice, in short, that's going to be most helpful. So then within the 6 sort of sessions of this module, yeah, this is the 5th. So last session we spoke about, earlier we spoke generally about, kind of what is death in general, what is a person, what is it to die, then what are the benefits of thinking about impermanence and death. Basically that it encourages us to practice Dharma and practice well and practice in a pure way that's unmixed with selfish reasons and attachment to pleasures of this life. Although, of course, I mean, a lot of pleasure comes, like by practicing Dharma, that's okay, but that shouldn't be our main objective. And then the drawbacks of not thinking about impermanence and death, mainly that we don't really focus on those things that are most meaningful in life, and we easily engage in a lot of non-virtuous actions and harm others, and then die with a lot of regret and totally unprepared at the end. So yeah, drawbacks and the benefits, and then thinking about the 9-point death meditation, that death is certain to happen. When it's going to happen is totally not certain, could happen anytime, so we need to prepare from now. And then thinking about what's going to be most beneficial as we die. And then after that, we looked at, last session, the 8 absorptions. So that's especially looking at, in our physical body, what happens, and the appearances to our mind, how those 25 constituents, 25 things that make us up as a person, how they gradually cease to function. Yeah, stage by stage in these 8 stages. And then especially how in the last 4 stages, well, the grosser levels of mind cease to function or absorb. And then more and more subtle levels of the mind become manifest until finally we arrive at the most subtle level of mind, clear light of death, which is extremely important kind of to know about, become familiar about, learn about that clear mind of death, because that's the state of mind which becomes enlightened, which goes on to enlightenment, which has existed from beginningless time until now. It's not something that sometimes appears and sometimes goes away, although sometimes it's manifest and we can experience it, which is one unique feature about death, is that it becomes manifest, whereas usually in our day-to-day life, ordinary life, it's completely sort of dormant or hidden from us. We can't access it. But that yeah, and what if we can use that clear light mind of death, that most subtle level of mind, to transform into positive states, especially wisdom realizing emptiness, which is an antidote to or refutes or eliminates the ignorance grasping at inherent existence, then we can utterly eliminate the root causes of suffering, samsara, for ourselves. And then once we've done that for ourselves, we know how to do that for others. So, so this session, we want to look at basically five headings. So it's about how we die and take rebirth. So last session was also about how we die, but in terms of the 8 absorptions at the time of death. This session is more in terms of the other things, and especially karma, 12 links of dependent arising. So again, how we die and take rebirth as well. So we'll look at in these 3 headings. There's first 5 factors, which are, yeah, it's kind of a little bit miscellaneous aspects about, dying and taking rebirth, but it's under this heading, how we die and take rebirth. There's actually 5 subheadings in the typical Lam Rims. So I'm drawing the terms used here from the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa. But there's a similar presentation in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. I don't think it made it into the required readings for this topic because it's not in the small scope. This is a presentation from the middle scope. So in the outlines, which I'll send out just after this session, I update that Word document of the outlines. I added, or did I? No, I didn't yet. I have to add the page numbers from Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. I'll add it in there and send it out. And I can also add the page numbers from the great treatise on the stage path to enlightenment. Okay. But anyway, it's in the middle scope section just before the 12 links of dependent arising. So anyway, there's 5 headings there. We'll go through those first briefly, and then look at 2 different kinds of karma that primarily play a role in how we take rebirth. And then we'll briefly look at the 12 links of dependent arising. So those of you who know about the 12 links of dependent arising might be wondering, like, how can you possibly do that in 1/3 of a session? Because usually it takes, multiple sessions to go through. It's a very complex, detailed thing. But and it's not typically part of discovering Buddhism, but it's very helpful and very good to be familiar with. So I just want to give you a little taste of it, and then if you're interested, you can learn more about it later on. Okay, so now stop flipping back and forth between sharing and not sharing. Okay, so I just a couple of verses from the Foundation of All Good Qualities, which you went through, I think, last module, about impermanence and death. Just as kind of a review. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, this prayer, this life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative actions and accomplish all virtuous deeds. So that's kind of a good summary for this whole topic. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. So thinking about, remember, and I think it's in the 9-point death meditation under the 2nd heading, the time of death is uncertain. One reason the time of death is uncertain is because the body is so fragile. There's so many different causes, things that can cause our death, and even the things which sustain our life can become causes of death. And then the body is so incredibly fragile. So that's what he brings to mind. And for that reason, there's no certainty how long we're going to live or when we're going to die. This life is impermanent. It's changing moment by moment, and it's as a water bubble. It's also very fragile. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. So remember, yeah, how quickly each day, week, months, years, they pass by, and then before we know it, we're facing death. After death, just like a shadow. So after death, just like a shadow follows the body. So remember, think about how, walking on a sunny day or in the moonlight, you're walking through light, and how your shadow is continually with you. It never, it never goes somewhere else. It's always there, just naturally. So like that, whenever we engage in intentional actions, volitional actions, then we create karma. Just not because anybody, any creator God decided that's what happens, or because we want to or not want to. It's just a natural phenomena. And we experience the results of that karma. So after death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of our own black and white karma, they follow, they shape our future experience. So that's especially what we'll look at today. Finding firm and definite conviction in this. Please bless me to always be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative action, so especially harming others, or harming ourselves, or acting out of anger, jealousy, malevolent intent, or greed, so forth, selfish greed. So please bless me. So bless me is, requesting the blessing of our teachers, objects of refuge, to always be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative actions, and to accomplish all virtuous deeds right up to enlightenment. So let's just kind of review from this prayer. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so here are the 5 factors that we're going to discuss briefly about death. So one, so causes of death. I think Tsongkhapa goes through like 12 different causes, but mainly think about what are the causes of death. Things like the karma, is one, a throwing karma that threw us into this life. That karma which caused us to take rebirth as a human, it comes to an end, right? It just, it's said each throwing karma has a certain kind of power to enable us to be in that life, whether it's as an animal or a human or hell being or whatever, to exist in that state for a certain period of time. So that just comes to an end. Our karma to be in this life comes to an end, and then we die. It's one reason. Another reason is, we meet obstacles to that karma completely playing out. Like, and here I think it mentions like 9 different things, but things that we ordinarily think of like causing death, like poison or an accident. We meet an accident, like a car accident, or but a lot of them are about food, undigested food, or undigestible food, or we don't have enough food, or we eat too much food, or things that kind of pollute our body and cause illness to arise. Anyway, there's all those kinds of causes of death. So anyway, we meet one kind of cause of death, whether it's karma being exhausted or some kind of harm from outside or some kind of illness, and then we die. So then the mind at death, this is what you all were just discussing before I joined. Before was here, basically there's just 2 things. That, well, any of our mental states can be classified in one of 3, either virtuous mental state, or non-virtuous mental state, or neutral, right? So the mind at death is going to be one of those 3. There's no 4th possibility. So the mind at death means, especially in just the moments before we lose the capacity to conceptualize, as we were just discussing at the beginning. So it doesn't mean actually, because actual death happens when, so remember the 8 absorptions, right? So are gradually, the more gross levels of mind cease to function and absorb into the more subtle. Then finally we arrive through the 8 absorptions. There's the mirage, and they're named according to the appearance, what the internal appearance that we have to our mind. So there's the mirage-like appearance, smoke-like appearance, and the sparks, spark, like sparks in smoke or in a dark sky. And then the light of a flickering lamp. It's the first four. Remember, at those times, what first is the earth element absorbs, then the water element, then the fire element, then the air element. Yeah, and then another way to think about it is first the eye sense consciousness absorbs, then the ear sense consciousness, then the nose sense consciousness, and finally the body and the tongue sense consciousness during the appearance of the flickering lamp. And then the 80 conceptual consciousness absorb. So once those 80 conceptual consciousness absorb, then after that is much more subtle levels of mind during the next four, right? During the white sky-like appearance, because the way that's the way it's labeled in the advice, dying and living a better life. The white mind sky appearance. It's usually called the white appearance of Alan Karlampa. Yeah, just the white appearance. Yeah, anyway, the white appearance, then the orange, kind of orangish sky-like appearance, and then the black. It's called the black appearance of near attainment, because we're almost attaining clear light of death. And then finally the clear light. So during those four, we can't conceptualize much. So it's during at the end of the first four, when we, and then the 80 conceptions absorb. So at that time we can't think about very much. So, but death happens, right? Not when, so when the clear light arises, clear light mind of death, we're not dead yet, right? The mind is still in our heart chakra, right? And for as long as we can abide, even an ordinary person can abide in that state for 3 days. So yeah, it's best if you can make arrangements that your body isn't disturbed for 3 days after you die, which is a little difficult in the West, but possible. Yeah, I remember I had my mother's immediate elder sister died about 6 years ago, and she was in a coma. She had a stroke, and she was in a coma for quite a long time. I think like 10 days or 2 weeks before she finally died. My mom and we live in. I mean, my mom lives in North Carolina. Her sister lives in California, Sacramento. No, not Sacramento. Sorry, Lancaster. It's just north of Los Angeles, Lancaster. So my mom flew out there to be with her sister, and yeah, because yeah, that aunt, my aunt, she has, I don't know, like 6 kids, and she's very attached to her kids and very concerned about them, and was very involved, especially with her daughter, the youngest of them, my cousin. So my mother felt that she was staying in a coma so long because she was attached to her children, having a really difficult time like letting go. But then my mother was there. My mother came back. She told me she was so upset because as soon as my aunt stopped breathing, then her husband, who's a little bit of a ne'er-do-well, he he called like 911 immediately. Called the ambulance and immediately had the paramedics come and take her body away before she's even cold. You know, she stopped breathing, but before her body is even like cold in the torso, they were having her carried out. My mother, I think she had them wait at least a few hours or something, but she was really upset. But so you don't want that to happen. You want, you know, the body to be left peacefully until the signs of death arise, right? So coming back to when you're actually dead, right? So the clear light mind of death, the most subtle mind of death. So at that point you stop breathing. Remember, you stop breathing at the fourth absorption, right? And then there's the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So eighth is the clear light mind of death. So at that time you're not breathing, but the mind is still in the body. And you know that because rigor mortis doesn't set in, right? Rigor mortis only sets in after the mind has left the body, right? So during that time, the body is still fresh and supple and soft, and there's no foul smell. So, but there's also no, you can't voluntarily conceptualize. So then it's when the clear light mind of death comes to an end and you begin the reverse process, then the black near attainment arises again. At that time, the mind leaves the body. So the clear light mind of death coming to an end, the the reverse order, black near attainment, or black mind sky-like appearance, and the consciousness leaving the body and the beginning of the bardo all happen at the same time. Right? This is described clearly in the required reading for today in advice for dying and living a better life. But there's those four things happen simultaneously. Right? The clear mind death comes to an end, the bardo begins, the mind leaves the body, and then the reverse order black near attainment appears. So that's death, right? So that's the moment of death. So when we talk about this, what we're talking about now, right? Remember, well, I forgot the mind at death, right? So the mind at death actually means the mind, or like right before death, right? So it's, and so basically, if we have a virtuous state of mind in those moments or hours or even days before death, it's that mind that triggers, for a virtuous state, it'll trigger a positive karma to ripen and throw us into a good rebirth. If we have a very non-virtuous mind just before we die, that'll trigger negative karma to ripen and throw us into a bad rebirth. If we have a neutral state of mind, then it's more up to just habituation, like which karma ripens. So there's a question about which karma ripens. We'll come back to that. But that's why it's so important to try to generate a virtuous mind at the state of death. And it's, of course, habituation helps, but it's even possible for, as Holiness points out, Lamas always point out, for a person to have a very virtuous life, but at the time of death, they become annoyed at something, angry about something just before they die. And that triggers a non-virtuous karma to ripen. And the opposite is also possible. It's possible for a person to have a very, destructive, negative life, where they engaged in a lot of non-virtuous actions, harmed a lot of people, were very angry, but have like a very virtuous mind, like of faith or whatever, remorse and kind of love to manifest just before they die, and then cause a very virtuous karma to ripen. Right. So that period just before a person, this is why like hospice work is so important. And it's so important to learn about the whole death process and be comfortable with it and to help people, as they approach that. So that, because it's really, it can really determine what their whole next life is going to be like, right? So, so it's really important to, for ourselves to imagine what kind of mental state we want to be in, and also practice doing that kind of like, here, I often think about when I learned how to kayak, when I was younger before, but like when you first learn how to kayak, you just kayak in a pool, right? So in kayaking, one of the most difficult things to do is the Eskimo roll, right? Where you roll over and then flip yourself back up without, getting out of the kayak, because it's a pain to get out of the kayak and then get back in again. You have to go over to the beach and whatever. So, but doing an Eskimo roll in a pool is not that difficult. It looks kind of difficult, but it's actually not that difficult. But then doing it in the whitewater is a whole different thing, right? And you're in a, imagine going down a whitewater river in a kayak and you get rolled over, and it's scary. There could be rocks, and you don't know what the current's doing, and you're underwater. To try to like situate yourself to like flip yourself back up with the paddle, like while you're in the kayak, is just like really, really difficult. It's nothing like doing it in a pool. So I kind of like, when we imagine, generating a virtuous state of mind at the time of death, while we're sitting in our room on our meditation cushion and we're fine and healthy, it's not that difficult. But when we're actually like sick in a hospital, losing control of our body and stuff, way more difficult, right? So we have to really practice to do it. So when you do an Eskimo roll in the whitewater, it's called a combat roll. So it's kind of like we need to be ready for the combat, like meditation on death, when we're actually in it. That's probably a very American expression, and we like to use military analogies for everything. So that's the mind of death. So, but it can help. This is where friends and family can help, actually, especially Dharma friends. It can help to remind a person to focus on whatever they have faith in, or focus their mind on virtuous things as they're dying. So again, this is before their ear consciousness stops to function. So remember, at the second stage of absorption, the ear consciousness stops to function. But before that, while even you can't see anymore, but people can speak to you and remind you about now think about whatever. Say for a Buddhist, think about your refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. think about, for a student of His Holiness, think about His Holiness, remember, loving kindness and compassion and so forth. Remember all the, everything that appears to your mind is impermanent, empty of inherent existence and so forth. So it can help people that way. Or you can have friends help you that way. Yeah, I think like Venerable Palma was mentioning before, if there's certain prayers you do daily, you can record them and have your friends play them for you as you're dying. Can be helpful. So the mind at death is all about that. Then where heat gathers, we already discussed this before. So basically the idea is just if you're going to take, so this is as, so remember the heat gathers as the element of fire is ceasing to function, is when the periphery of your body starts to become cold and heat starts to gather towards the heart chakra. So remember before I mentioned that so at that time, the karma to throw us into the next life is already starting to function, right? It's already activated and starting to function. So if we're going to be thrown into a virtuous, like a rebirth in the upper realm as a human or a god or a demigod, then it said the heat will gather from the lower part of our body towards the chest, right? It'll come up. Whereas if we're going to take rebirth in a lower realm, in hell or hungry ghost or as animal, then the heat will dissipate from the upper part of the body and kind of move down. Right? So again, and I remember James' question last session about, well, how do you know when we were going through all the different signs of the 8 absorptions? You're asking, how do you know about those? And I was saying, well, it's mainly because, yogis have experience or people have near-death experience, they can remember. But these kind of signs, like the way the heat gathers, or the person first losing sight, then losing hearing, and their tongue shortening, and we can those external signs. There's external signs and internal signs, right? So the external signs we can see, right? So it's helpful also to either do hospice work or speak to nurses who have worked at hospitals or people who've been with the dying and learn more about what actually happens at the time of death. Then you can see, I've seen a lot, there is good correlation between what's reported and what's described in the Buddhist texts. And because I haven't been around dying people much, but I always take the opportunity to ask when I meet people who have been. There's quite good correlation with what people seem to actually see. But of course, we can't know what's going on in the dying person's mind, right? Directly. That's the difficult one. Okay. So where he gathers is just that, yeah, those virtuous versus non-virtuous. Rebirth. Then the next one, how we reach the intermediate state after death. So this is basically the process I just described, where the clear light mind of death becomes manifest, and then that ceases, and then eventually, and then immediately, it's said like, here the analogy is given of like a seesaw or a balance, a scale, where when one goes up, the way I'm looking at on myself on the screen is perverse, but anyway, one goes up, the other goes down, like automatically, right? Here, it's like this, so like that. So when you, at the time, the clear light mind of death functions and you leave this life, then immediately you take rebirth into the intermediate state, the bardo, right? So when you do that, then you go through the 8 absorptions in the reverse order. So from clear light mind of death, you go to the black near attainment, then the orange sky appearance, white sky appearance, and then the flickering lamp appearance, then the sparks, smoke, mirage, and then boom, it's like you wake up, right? You're a bardo being. So as a bardo being, that the body of the bardo being in the mind state is primarily shaped by the karma, which is going to throw your next rebirth, right? So some people say, I guess in some texts it said that in some Tibetan text, I'm not sure, Indian text, that as a bardo being, you have a similar body and persona to the one you just left. But clearly, Lama Tsongkhapa says, no, it's primarily shaped because your karma that shaped your past life has ended, right? So it makes more sense that the Bardo being is an outcome of the karma that's going to shape your future life. Anyway, so it said the Bardo being that you have, the kind of body you have is similar to the kind of body you'll have in your next rebirth, at the age of like 5 or 6 years old. And then different Bardo beings, so there's a lot of description about the Bardo here. Different Bardo beings move in different ways. So those that are going to take rebirth in the lower realms are kind of stooped over or move like downward. Those that are going to take rebirth as a human, sort of upright and move sort of level. And those that are going to be rebirth in the upper realms have a sense of moving up. And then there's different colors. Like, I think those that will take rebirth in the God realms. Yeah, there's a lot of details, and I don't remember it all like crystal clear, but I'll just give you some idea. I think they have like a goldish appearance, whereas those who take rebirth as humans have a whitish appearance. Those who take rebirth in hell have like the appearance of like dark gray sort of appearance. And generally the appearance in the Bardo is said to be like, for those who take rebirth in lower realms, as like a night sky, just darkness. And then there's different like scary things appear, visions appear. Those who take a good rebirth, it's like a night sky, but with beams of moonlight or strips of white, said. Appearance, something like that. And then the Bardo being's body is a very subtle body, so they can move anywhere, and by the power of their karma instantly. I think I mentioned this before. Like whenever they think about a place, instantly they're there, and nothing obstructs their movement, either walls or earth or mountains or whatever, except holy objects. Rinpoche says, holy objects and the place of rebirth. Wherever the place they're going to take rebirth, they can't move through that. They're, by the power of their karma, they're just there. And what are the other details about? Oh, Bardo beings, so that all their senses are complete, meaning they can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And they also have clairvoyance, such that they can see other Bardo beings who have similar karma and know their minds. And His Holiness, I think it's His Holiness says, or Pomokar Mishe says, that even if they can see like the relatives, their own relatives that they just, were separated from, their corpse of the body they just died from, or their relatives and so forth, and the place of their death, they won't remember their names and their association with them, because that karma has finished. So they won't feel a sense of association with them. It says something like that. Anything else important about the Bardo? So a Bardo being lasts in that state for 7 days at maximum, looking for, I'm not sure, I don't think it's their conscience is looking for a place of rebirth, but it's whether the conditions for them to take rebirth, whether they come together or not. But they can last in that state for 7 days. If they don't sort of, rebirth doesn't happen in that time, then they die from that state and take rebirth again as a Bardo being. For another 7 days, up to 7 times. So it said a person can last in the Bardo for up to 49 days. But there's some debate about that, whether that's really the case or not. Why 49 days? Why 7 times? Why not more? There's some debate about that. But then, let's see. So then the way the Bardo ends eventually, though, so say the person's going to take rebirth as a human, is that their karma to take rebirth as a human, finds conditions for it to ripen. So there's a suitable mother and father, parents, that they have some kind of karmic connection with. And then, so the Bardo being, so then for the Bardo being to take rebirth, it has to be as human. Then it has to be that the parents are, aligned together in sexual union. And then the Bardo being, through the power of their karma, they see that and they're attracted to, if they're going to take rebirth as a woman, as a girl, then they're attracted more to the father. If they're going to take rebirth as a boy, they're attracted more to the mother. And then they come close to their future parents. And then it said they see their sexual organs in union, and then they become upset at that. That causes anger to arise in their mind. Or they generate like jealousy. but some afflictive emotion arises, and then that causes them to die from the bardo state, and then their mind stream enters the sperm and egg cell that have conjoined, and then then that begins their life as a human. Yeah. Anyway, there's more details about all that, the different characteristics of a bardo being, and more details about the process of that. But maybe I won't go into that so much now. We can talk more about it next session if you like. But there's so many details, I can't remember them all. Even I read through it, just somehow doesn't stick in my mind. But so that's how we reach the intermediate state after death, roughly like that. And then how we take rebirth also, is kind of what I just described. So those are those 5 factors, right? So there's 5 factors about how we take rebirth, how we die and take rebirth. And then, so now 2 kinds of karma is what I want to look at next. So basically when we take rebirth, the main kind of karma is throwing karma, right? But then there's also completing karma, which determines a lot of the kind of the situation, the aspect of the situation we're in when we take rebirth. So say like throwing karma mainly determines like what kind of being we take rebirth as. If we take rebirth as like an animal or a human or a hell being, a deva, in a pure land or something. So what kind of being do we take rebirth as, and for how long do we last in that existence? So that has to be a very powerful karma that has the power to to create the appearance of an entire life, an entire kind of persona, and cause us to abide in that kind of state of existence for for so many years. Whereas completing karma is determined more like, well, what kind of body, as a human, say we take rebirth as a human, like as a human, what kind of body do we have? Are we complete in all our faculties or not? Or do we have some kind of ailments or whatever, like we can't, are impaired in hearing or sound, or somehow crippled, or are just kind of weak versus very healthy. And then what kind of family we're born into, what kind of environment, what kind of prosperity we're able to acquire, experience in that life or not. All those different kinds of what kind of people we meet or don't meet, all the things that happen to us during a life are much determined by this kind of completing karma. So the completing means it kind of fills in the whole picture, it completes the experience of that life. So I just made up this kind of definition. I didn't take it from anywhere. So throwing karma that has the power to throw a rebirth so throwing karma is very powerful due to having been created with all 4 factors, right? So there's 4 main factors that create a karma. There's a basis, means the person creating the karma and the objects in relation to which we create it. So there's a basis, an intention, and then a preparation means the actual activity we do before we actually complete that. So just to give you a quick example, like an example of creating a karma of, I don't know, let's say an act of generosity. So then the basis is us, the person, being generous, and then the person that we're giving something to, right? Those are the basis. So those are there. And then the intention, we have an intention to give something. And then here the motivation plays a part. So the motivation could be selfish. I'm giving something because I want to get something in return, or it can be selfless. I'm just giving because I see the person has a need and I have the ability to fulfill that need. So there's an intention. And then the preparation is we might need to, do things to, I don't know, get their bank details or ask about, what can we do to help, and whatever we do before we actually make the gift offering. And then the completion is, in that time we're preparing, we might decide, oh, well, I don't really have enough money to give, or I don't really want to do this for whatever reason, and then stop, right? But we've already created some virtuous karma just by starting to do that without completing it. Or the person might die before we can make the gift we intended to, whatever, anything could happen. So then the final thing is the completion, right? That we actually give whatever, in this case, give something, and then that person, knows recognizes they've received, then it's a complete act of giving. So for a throwing karma has to be complete in all these 4 factors of karma. There's a basis, intention, the preparation of the activity, and then the actual completion of the action. So it's one that's established with all those parts intact. Whereas a completing karma is a weaker kind of karma. It's a karma that does not have the power to throw a rebirth, but determines various conditions a person experiences within a rebirth. So, and it doesn't have to be complete in all those factors of basis, intention, preparation. You know, one of those, even one of those is not present, then we can, it's just a weaker karma, but it still has the power to produce some effect. So, that's one reason. One of the main karma said to take rebirth as a human being is practicing pure morality, right? Abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. So practicing the morality of not stealing, not killing, not lying, not engaging in adultery, sexual misconduct, not abandoning slander, harsh speech or hurtful speech, idle gossip, and then abandoning the minds of malevolence and covetousness and ignorance. So that's considered like the main karma that throws human rebirth, to practice pure morality. But then it's also said we need to practice generosity. If we want to have prosperity in that rebirth, we need to practice generosity, right? So if you want to work to benefit, you know, beings a lot, learn a lot, it helps to have some prosperity, right? And then also need to make stainless prayers that we take rebirth as a human, if we want to take rebirth as a human, with all the conditions to be able to continue, you know, in our chosen path. I'm sitting on a higher chair today. Someone else put here. My shoulder keeps being up over the Buddha, which I don't really like. So I'm going to slouch down. Out of respect for the Buddha, I'm going to slouch. It seems opposite. Huh? Okay. Yeah. So these 2 kinds of karma. So that's something, you know, in relation to the whole thinking about the whole process of death, and preparing for that. It's good also to think about what kind of karma we're creating, and especially when we dedicate, you know, at the end of any practice, to make prayers to take a good rebirth. Okay, so then I want to look at, so that's the 2 kinds of karma. So now, I don't know, we have about 5 minutes left for the 12 links of dependent arising. I'm just checking. I'll take a little bit more time. So now we want to look at the 12 links of dependent arising, which describes the whole process by the way we create karma, and then how that karma ripens and we die and take rebirth. But like I said, it's quite complicated, but I just want to give you a little taste of it now. So, and this is associated with this famous illustration, which I'll show you now, the Wheel of Life, which you might have seen. This is the FPMT version, which I'll send out in the email. I'll send to Mary Ellen to send us an email. So this is the Wheel of Life. So yeah, there's a story basically during the Buddha's time. The Shakyamuni Buddha actually commissioned this painting, you can say. During the Buddha's time, there were several kings, regional kings who were his disciples. So one of his disciples, who was a king, received an incredibly valuable gift from a neighboring king, and he felt he didn't have anything to give a return gift in kind. So he asked the Buddha what to do. He's quite worried about it. And the Buddha said, "Send me a painter, and I'll have this painting made which depicts samsara and how we take rebirth and how we can be liberated from samsara, and you can give that as a gift." So he did, and then independence upon giving this gift and explaining it to the neighboring king, it said that king contemplated it deeply and achieved liberation from samsara that very life. So I'll zoom in now. See if I can. I'm not sure how to eliminate the toolbar there. Anyway, I'll forget it. I'll just zoom in. So you can see this creature is it's what do I say, a depiction of death. So it's the Lord of Death. He's holding all of samsara in his clutches, which means as long as we take rebirth in samsara, we'll experience death. Then there's this verse up here, which we'll come back to. That's what's translated here at the bottom. Come back to that. And then in the Wheel of Life, there are 4 main sections, right? There's a beginning at the center. This is the three, so this is a depiction of samsara. These are the root causes of samsara here, the 3 afflictive emotions of ignorance is the pig, represented by the pig. And then coming from his mouth is a rooster, representing attachment, and a snake. Here, I'll zoom in more so you can see. Come on. Okay. The pig, these are the 3 root delusions. So 3 fundamental causes of samsara. The pig, ignorance being most fundamental. And then from the pig's mouth comes it's kind of a rooster or a pigeon, instead of a bird that's very, I think, enamored with its own appearance, representing attachment, and a snake representing anger. And then from those comes karma. So this second wheel represents white and black karma. Black karma, you can see the beings engaging in non-virtuous actions, like looks like he's killing someone, attacking someone, and then taking rebirth and suffering states, going down. And then white karma, people engaging in virtuous actions, have a bunch of monastics there, and going up, right? So based on non-virtuous karma, we take rebirth in more and more suffering, miserable states. Based on creating virtuous karma, we take rebirth in more and more pleasant states. So then those kinds of rebirth are depicted in the next wheel. This largest panels represent the 6 realms in samsara. So we can start at the bottom here as the hells. So there's hot hells here, all red, and then the cold hells, and then the surrounding hells here. And then here are the hungry ghost realms. Try to zoom in a little bit more. You can see all the stuff that happens in the hungry ghost realms a little bit. Anyway, there's the hungry ghost realms there. So they have these huge bellies. They're perpetually hungry and can't get food due to craving and miserly. You take rebirth there due to largely miserliness and craving, to do with attachment. Whereas you primarily take rebirth in hell due to anger, having mind of anger and intentionally harming others. And then take rebirth as in an animal realm. Here's the animal realm. Due to sort of just blindly following your hedonistic kind of desires, sort of ignorance that just blindly follows attachment. So those are the 3 lower realms, and then the upper realms. There's human realm here, our happy realm, human realms, and then the Deva realm here. And within the Deva realm, there's gods, more powerful gods up here, and then the demigods, they're like less powerful gods down here. So those are the realms we take rebirth in. And then what we're mainly concerned in now is the outermost realm. So this depicts the 12 links of dependent arising. So I'll take you to just a list of them first, and then we can look at the illustrations. Well, first, actually, this is my PowerPoint slide again. So this is a quotation where in this sutra, the Rice Seedling Sutra, the Buddha clearly describes this whole wheel of life, and especially the 12 links of dependent arising. But he introduces all that with just a general statement about dependent arising. Venerable Bhikshus, whoever sees dependent and relative origination or dependent arising sees the Dharma. Whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. What is this dependent and relative origination of which I speak? It is this: because this exists, that arises. Because that is born, this is born. So this is just a general description about what dependent origination is. One thing depends upon another. Because this exists, one cause exists, then that arises. Certain results arise. Because this is born, because one thing is produced, like virtuous action, then this is born. Then, you know, a happy result arises. But the really powerful part of the statement is the first, right? Venerable Bhikshus, whoever sees dependent and relative origination sees the Dharma. So it's a very powerful statement. I mean, the Buddha is saying sort of the Dharma means like his spiritual teachings, like, and sort of saying dependent arising is the essence of all my spiritual teachings, right? Whoever doesn't see dependent origination ostensibly doesn't realize kind of the essence of what the Buddha taught. So whoever sees dependent and relative origination, dependent arising, sees kind of the essence of what, you know, the Buddha is teaching. And then whoever sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. So without understanding dependent origination, you can't really understand like what a Buddha is, what the Buddha is. And then what is this dependent and relative origination of which I speak? It is this, right? But here he's describing primarily, there's three kinds of dependent origination, main kinds, dependence upon causes and effects, you know, independent upon different causes and effects, results arise. And then the second kind, independence upon many parts, a collection of parts, then things exist independence upon parts, like your laptop or your phone, whatever's in front of you, it has all these different parts functioning, and dependence upon that, you have a laptop or a phone. And then the third kind of dependent arising is mental imputation. This is the most subtle kind, where in dependence upon a basis, we mentally impute things, and then thereby things exist. So independent upon a collection of parts, your laptop, or let's look at us as a person. We have a body, our body is not me, right? We have a mind is not me, and yet I exist. I don't exist separate from my body and mind. And yet I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm not the collection of body and mind. So how do I exist? I exist as something that's imputed upon this collection of body and mind. Does that mean I'm just like an idea? No, I'm a real thing, but I exist independence upon mental imputation. So that one's difficult, right? We'll come back to that in the module on emptiness. But just to give you, just to make it clear that the Buddha, when he's talking here about dependent origination, he's not only talking about cause and effect, right? There's different kinds. Okay, so then the 12 links of dependent arising. So are this. First, the link of ignorance. Then from that, compositional actions, which is kind of karma. So think of these arise one from the other. Yeah, roughly. So ignorance, then compositional actions, which means kind of karma. Especially here, think of throwing karma, right? So we have ignorance grasping at an inherently existent self. I, it's concrete, real existing I. And depends upon that, we feel I am more important than others. And then we're attached to some things we like, we find pleasurable. We're averse to other things we dislike. So we give rise to, you know, greed, jealousy, attachment on the one hand, and then anger, resentment, annoyance, and hatred, cruelty on the other hand. And then we engage in actions by which we create karma. So especially the powerful actions which are complete in the basis, intention, preparation, and completion. They are throwing karmas. They're powerful, complete karmas, and they have the power to throw an entire life. So, and those karmas, those karmic dispositions abide on our consciousness, on our stream of consciousness, which is the third link. So then when we take actual rebirth, then that, imagine, so we have those imprints on our mind, and then we die, and then one of them is ripened, and then we go through the bardo, and then we meet the conditions to take rebirth, and we take rebirth. So at the very first moment of rebirth, we have a name and form. So a name is our mind, first our mind, and a form is a body, a subtle body. And then as we develop in the womb, we take rebirth as a human, then we develop the 6 sense spheres, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. So as the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body gradually develop, we gradually develop the experience, the ability to experience or make contact with objects. So we gradually can see, hear, smell, and taste, and touch things, and have those experiences. Then in dependence of that contact with objects, we generate feelings of pleasant, to which we're attached, unpleasant, to which we're averse, or neutral feelings. So based upon, especially, so then we develop feelings. Based upon those kind of feelings, we generate craving to have those which we perceive as pleasant and to be separated from, to eliminate. We crave to be separated from those which we perceive as unpleasant. Then when that craving becomes more intense, so here, especially at the time of death, right? We crave, things, and then we grasp of them. It's like a more intense form of craving. And that craving and grasping at the time of death causes the karmas to be the karmic seed to take another rebirth to ripen, right? So that's potential existence, is that kind of karmic seed. It's like, what kind of seeds do we usually grow? Say like mung beans. If you make mung bean sprouts or alfalfa sprouts or something, some kind of sprouts. So, you soak the beans, the seed, for a while. And after, say, 12 hours, 24 hours, the seed is like, it's soft and it's expanded because it's been soaked. But just before it puts out a shoot that's going to become the first root, just before that, it's like fully ripened, about to produce, about to transform from being a seed into a sprout, right? You can say. So that's like this potential existence is like that fully ripened karma about to produce a rebirth, right? So then there's that potential existence. It's like a seed that's been ripened by water. Here it's a karma that's been ripened by craving and grasping, as we're dying. And then as it produces a rebirth, and then once we take rebirth, then again, we experience aging and death. Right? So that's the 12 links that are being illustrated here. Yeah, so we are running out of time, so I'll just run through. So here's ignorance, represented by a blind person. Craving and grasping, represented by a potter making containers, like our karmas are containers that contain the power to throw rebirth. And then consciousness is illustrated by a monkey going from tree to tree. And then name and form, maybe, anyway, it's illustrated by a person in a boat. I don't remember why, that one. And then six senses, just like a building has windows through which we can see things. Our six senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, are like windows through which we can experience the world. And then feeling is like, this is a person drinking alcohol. So like when you taste alcohol, you get some kind of feeling, a pleasant feeling. And then that leads to craving. So that's that illustration. And then there's a person with an arrow stuck in their eye. So when you have feeling, leads to craving. It's like you experience a pleasure of something, and then when you don't have it, it hurts. It's painful, right? It's a kind of craving, and you crave for it. So that's that arrow in the eye represents the kind of pain that comes from not having what you want, basically. And then grasping is represented. I think this is another person. Still, actually, the feeling might be, I think, a man and woman together. See. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's like a couple together. And then the grasping here is like, I think it's supposed to be an alcohol. This is a person drinking alcohol for sure. So I think that's an intense, like, craving, like an alcoholic craves alcohol. And then here, this is what existence. I think it's, what is it called? Conversational existence or something. So this is like a person picking fruit from a tree. I don't know. Remember, this is the karma that's about to throw a rebirth. I don't remember the explanation of that illustration. And then here's rebirth. So it's a woman in a tent giving. Oh, no, sorry. I'm messing up. Hold on, I got to jump back to my list. I missed one somewhere. Sixth sense spheres, contact. I like contact. Oh yeah, I missed contact. Contact is that man and woman in a tent, and then feeling is the arrow, and then craving is the alcoholic. Grasping is that the person picking fruit from a tree. That's what it is. Yeah. Sorry. So here's contact. Oh, so this is a man and woman together, like making love, whatever. That's contact with the object. And then feeling is sort of the pain that comes from either pleasant, unpleasant feelings, and then craving, and then grasping over here. And then so here is the potential existence. So it's I think like a time of conception, and here's a woman giving birth. So this is rebirth. And then here's old age and death. They're one together. So those, yeah. Sorry, I don't have time to go into more detail, but those kind of illustrate the in more detail the whole process of taking rebirth and dying. And then the verse at the bottom. Well, here's one translation. There's another translation on that illustration I'll send out, but here's maybe a little, yeah, one translation is. So this is what the Buddha had this verse is appended to that illustration. It says, undertaking this and leaving that, enter into the teaching of the Buddha. So undertaking virtuous actions and leaving virtuous actions, leaving non-virtuous actions, right? Undertaking positive actions and leaving negative actions. Enter into the teaching of the Buddha. Like an elephant in a mud hut, destroy the forces of death. So if samsara is like a mud hut, like a very weak, frail structure because it's based on totally misconception, then we want to be like an elephant that just destroys it. Destroy the forces of death. Those who, with thorough conscientiousness, practice this taming doctrine, means practice pure morality, engage in the practice of pure morality taught by the Buddha, will, having totally abandoned the wheel of birth, bring suffering to an end. Right? So you can bring suffering to an end, yeah, by practicing this teaching. So then we bring to an end my presentation for today. Okay, I see Anne has a question already. Has her hand up for hours now.
No, it was really simple. Actually, you mentioned that the cause for human rebirth was pure morality, generosity, and stainless prayers. Mm-hmm. What kind of stainless prayers? Like all prayers? Or?
No, to take rebirth as a human.
Oh, okay.
Without, and they would be stained if it's totally for selfish and worldly reasons, right? So especially with an altruistic or a dharma intention, you want to take rebirth as a human.
Cool.
So stainless prayer.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. And Jorge has a question. Yes, Jorge.
I have two questions, if you don't mind. My first question is about throwing karma. So I had a small discussion about a certain situation. So let's assume my girlfriend or somebody next to me is sad, and I want to cheer them up, but I see somebody across with me that looks like let's say a character from like Cartman, and I say, hey, look, it's Cartman. My intention is not to make fun of the person. My intention is not to do anything bad at all or cause any like bad feelings. My intention is to make her happy. Is that bad karma?
Yeah, that's a good question. Often karma is mixed, right? There can be different parts to it. I mean, your intention to make your girlfriend happy, of course, is, well, even that can be mixed. I mean, if it's really exclusive, like for her, you just want to benefit her, that's quite virtuous, right? But if it's mixed with actually you want to benefit her so that you can get something in return, then it becomes partly non-virtuous, right? Selfish. Which often it is. It's hard for us to kind of, separate. It's hard for us to totally get rid of our selfish intentions. Like they're almost always there in some form. But that's what we try to do. Dharma practitioners try to reduce our self-centered, selfish motivation. But okay, so the intention to benefit her, let's just assume it's totally pure. You really just want to benefit her. But then, like, what if the person that's sitting across the table who looks like Cartman, they hear you say to your girlfriend, oh, look, it's like Cartman, and they feel hurt, then it's negative karma, right? Because you just hurt someone's feelings, even though you didn't intend to. But yeah, by something you intentionally did, it had that result. So there's a negative aspect.
Right. I mean, that's
Yeah,
fine.
and then even if you say something to girlfriend and they don't hear about it, but you just didn't really, like you don't really care about how it affects that person if they do hear, that's also a little bit negative, right?
Right.
So yeah,
So
so
I
it's
guess,
probably mixed. Yeah, it'd be a mixed kind of karma.
because I'm trying to be aware that, look, I'm not gonna speak loud. I'm just gonna keep it in close quarters. Be like, I'm telling you specifically the joke. My intention is like, I know if he hears this joke, I'm going to feel bad because I don't want to hurt his feelings because maybe he's self-conscious or something. That's
Yeah, then you shouldn't say it. No, you should think of another thing you can do for your girlfriend to cheer her up that has no possibility of harming anyone. Right. But then, I mean, another difficult question comes about, well, what about things because sometimes we just innocently do things that are, quite virtuous and someone feels hurt. Like we can't control how other people feel or not. Then, is that negative karma or not? Maybe it's a question we come back to, the more tangible. What's the second part of your question? You had a second question.
Yeah, it's separate. It's about the wheel of life. So do you think we should, yeah, because my girlfriend showed me the picture of ignorance, which was a woman walking up a mountain that was blind. And I looked at it and I thought it was, oh, this is like a resilient woman who's like, even though she's blind, she's not gonna give up. And then,
Yeah.
And then she told me, no, it means ignorance. And I Googled blind woman and I see like blind woman just lost. Do you think there's a chance to update the wheel of life? Like to not
Well,
cause,
this one here I shared is not a woman, it's a man. This is a blind man. Usually it's a man because traditional
so
Buddhist
an
presentation
individual.
is quite patriarchal. Yeah, I mean, you can do, I mean, it's totally relative. You can depict any way. So this is a blind man walking. Yeah, I mean, that's one, well, now my cursor's, I'll stop share. Okay. That's one privilege we have as Western Buddhists, is it's new. Buddhism is new in the West, so we can decide how we want to, represent things. These are all just symbolic representations according to the particular culture, right? So we can totally update it. I mean, I highly encourage you, make a totally updated version of representation of the 12 links of dependent arising. That'd be great.
Thank you very much.
Actually, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Florence in Italy, which I totally wasn't interested to do, but my father insisted. We were nearby, so he insisted we go visit because he'd been there before. And I was really grateful to him. I was quite blown away by the artwork and the architecture and the whole story of the Florence. I didn't realize. But I felt like what happened in Florence in the kind of Great Renaissance is very similar to sort of what's happening in the West between the meeting of, especially, I mean, as a Buddhist monk or something about Buddhism. But the meeting of Buddhism and Western culture, there's this incredible opportunity for the synthesis between these two kind of traditions that have a lot of wisdom, each have a lot of wisdom, like to meet. So like in Florence, it was at that time the Italians were rediscovering the wisdom of Athens and ancient Greece, but they were in a Christian world, Christian world. So they were trying to combine these ideas of like their Christian ideals with artistic and expressions that they took from ancient Greece, in the golden age in Greece, combining those. So yeah, we can try to use those, create some new symbolism, the wheel of life.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Any other questions about stuff I just kind of went through? So again, we went through, what is it? These 5 factors of sort of how we die, the mind of death, how we enter the bardo, and then die from the bardo and take rebirth. One hand, and how the heat gathers is the other one, and then the 2 different kinds of karma: throwing karma and completing karma. And then in these 12 links of dependent arising, I just looked at very briefly. Yeah. So. Any questions about those things? Otherwise, the next thing is, I think, we do a discussion group first this time, I think. But let's take a break. So why don't we we have about for 40 minutes left. All right, so let's take a few minutes break, and then we'll do discussion group, and then we'll meditate. I think it's time. Okay, so like 3 minutes break. Thank you, and welcome back, everyone. And I was just thinking, while some people coming back, usually when I because when I come to join the sessions, it's Wednesday morning here. So usually, you know, I have to, so my room is across the house. This is the office I'm in our house. It's on the opposites. Our house is like a big square with a courtyard in the middle. So this room where I come for the sessions is like the opposite side of the house from my room. And it's right next to the gate. So when I'm leaving my room, I usually have my laptop and my headphones and my mouse. And I'm leaving my room to walk here to the office to come join you all for the session. I always think like, oh, maybe I need my mask. I'm so habituated to like grabbing my mask on the way out to meet people. So when I think of coming here to meet you all in the Zoom room, I'm like, oh, do I need my mask? I'm like, no, it's just Zoom. Yeah. So let's do discussion group first this time. And then we'll just do maybe a brief meditation at the end. So we have 20 minutes now for discussion. And yeah, I'll flash up my screen again. I just suggested some questions, but please keep in mind, I think I was thinking about what we're going to meditate on. I'm not really sure. So I'm just going to leave. We'll just have 10 minutes to meditate, and I'll leave it to you all to decide what you want to meditate on. We'll just sit quietly together for 10 minutes. But I think it's important now, like at this point, towards the end of the module, to start, we want to generate a sort of cohesive, you know, each of us, our own cohesive sort of understanding and perspective on death and impermanence. So I'll leave it to you all to decide what to meditate on from anything we've, you know, discussed or learned this entire module. So keep that in mind during discussion group. You can sort of start thinking about that. But these are just, you know, always just suggestions for things you might talk about. Which meditations have you found most helpful or compelling in this module so far? Are you becoming more confident with regard to facing death? What are some of the main points that you recall from today's presentation? So it's always good to use some discussion time to try to review a little bit, help each other remember what we talked about. So yeah, I mean, that's ideas. So please take 20 minutes, yeah, discuss in groups, and I'll come around and visit each group just briefly towards the end. Yeah, okay, welcome back everyone. So we only have 10 minutes left. So let's just do some meditation and then we'll dedicate at the end. So like I said, I'm not going to give instruction about what to meditate on this time. So I know this might be a little scary for some of you, especially if you're habituated to just doing guided meditations all the time. But use your inner wisdom. Check your own mind about what, you know, think of all the things that we've discussed, like I reviewed at the beginning about, you know, what is the person? There's a whole question about what is death? Who is it that dies and takes rebirth? And then the benefits of, you know, reflecting on, contemplating death, the drawbacks of not doing so. And then the 9-point death meditation. You know, the reasons that it's certain we're going to die, the reasons it's not certain when we're going to die. And then the observation that what is beneficial at the time of death is only Dharma, that's true or not. And then the 8 absorptions we discussed last time. And then this time, the kind of miscellaneous things that we discussed, these 5 factors about different causes of death, how the heat gathers, how we enter the bardo, and then take rebirth. And then different kinds of karma that throw a rebirth, throwing karma that throws it, and then the completing karma that fills in the experience. So we can reflect on what kind of karmas we want to create in preparation for death. And then the 12 links of dependent arising, which is probably, unless you're already familiar with it, it's a little difficult to meditate on based on what I just explained. But for yourself, try to work towards generating a coherent kind of understanding of death and how you yourself want to approach it. Okay, so 10 minutes, or actually only 7 minutes now. And meditate on whatever within that appeals to you. Okay, so we conclude. So I hope you'll keep make some time during the week to keep meditating on the different topics. Kind of like that, up to your own, your own choice, whatever you feel like you need to think about and reflect on in relation to these topics. You can use material from the readings, verses, from the outlines I've given. Then we have one more session 1 week from now. And then I'm planning to, I was just speaking with Mary Ellen during the discussion group time. We're planning to do a group sort of retreat, like 2 days of 4 meditation sessions, each session about an hour long, on February 5th and 6th. It's a Friday, Saturday. But we'll email more details about that soon. And then do the self-assessment and interviews sometime around that also. So we'll finish this whole module within the first 2 weeks of February. Okay, so let's just briefly dedicate now. Think of the merit we've created, oneself, others in the group. Rejoice. Then think of all the merit created by all sentient beings engaging in virtuous actions. And then all enlightened beings. Rejoice. And remember how oneself, the one who's making the dedication, the merit that's being dedicated, the objects, the aims towards which we're dedicating are all empty of inherent existence, empty of existing from their own side, and instead are all dependent arisings. And therefore the dedication has power. And we can dedicate, in short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering, especially the sufferings of birth and death through the force of afflictive emotions and karma. And may we quickly become enlightened in order to be of the greatest possible benefit to all sentient beings. And may authentic spiritual teachings flourish. May all sentient beings have spiritual guidance, and may authentic spiritual teachers have long and stable lives. And especially may all beings face death with a mind of peace and confidence, and die peacefully and take a best possible rebirth as a human being or as in a pure land or whatever. And then especially bring to mind anyone who's sick or has died recently or needs our prayers in some other way, especially Art, who was in a car crash a couple of weeks ago, was not able to be here. So may all those your prayers be accomplished in accordance with your wishes. Okay, we can conclude there. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, Deej.
Doris, thanks so much,
Yeah.
guys.